Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Deeksha Pandey, Additional Professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, KMC Manipal, and also the in charge of Urogynecology subdivision in our department. So as we keep on telling, this month we are doing all SUI cases, and today I have with me Dr. Sonam to discuss yet another case of stress urinary incontinence. So without further ado, I would like Sonam to start the history of the case.
Hello everyone. So today we have a case of 53-year-old premenopausal Mrs. X hailing from Tirthahalli. She's a homemaker belonging to lower socioeconomic status. She came to us with a complaint of lower abdominal pain since 3 years, which has increased in last 3 months. She also has complaint of involuntary leaking of urine on coughing and sneezing and brisk walking, but it has worsened in last 3 months. She has this complaint since 3 years, worsened in last 3 months. History of presenting illness. She was apparently alright 3 years back. Then she developed this complaint of pain abdomen, lower abdominal pain, which was dull aching, intermittent, and non-radiating type of pain. But this pain has aggravated in last 3 months. She also has complaint of involuntary leaking of urine since 3 years, which was earlier only on coughing, sneezing, and brisk walking, but now even on bending over or even in change in posture. She also has complaint of increased frequency of micturition. She has no complaint of mass per vagina or white discharge per vagina or fever or burning micturition or urgency. She has no menstrual complaints and no bowel complaints. Coming to past history, she is married for 28 years with obstetric history of 2 normal vaginal deliveries, P2, L2, with both institutional normal vaginal deliveries and no history of any instrument application during delivery. She is sterilized and and the last childbirth was 26 years back. Menstrual history. She has regular cycles of 28 to 30 days with moderate flow, bleeds for 2 to 3 days, and has no clots or dysmenorrhea. And she has no other significant medical or surgical history. She has history of only one postpartum sterilization and no other major surgery, and also no other comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, or any other medical disorder. On examination, her general condition was fair, vitals were stable. On per abdominal examination, uterus was corresponding to 16 to 18 week size. It was firm, mobile, and non-tender. Cervix on per speculum examination, cervix looked healthy, paris os, minimal white discharge per vagina, and there was significant demonstrable stress urinary incontinence. On per vaginal examination, uterus was anteverted, again corresponding to 16 to 18 week size. Fornices were free, non-tender, and no cervical motion tenderness.
So we'll take a break here. So Sonam, when you were describing the history, what was her chief complaint?
Ma'am, she had
First
complaint
complaint of
lower
pain,
abdominal
lower
pain.
abdominal pain and stress incontinence. So then when you tried to take more history from her, she also told that she has frequency. She has frequency and some other thing.
Yes,
you
ma'am,
said?
she had
Urgency.
sometimes.
So if we combine all these things, what does it look like?
Ma'am, it looks like UTI. First thing that will come to my mind will be UTI, because increase in frequency, increase in urgency, pain abdomen, they all suggest of most common cause will be UTI.
With incontinence.
With
yes.
incontinence, yes, ma'am.
But one thing more is important here, Sonam, because nobody can have just cystitis for 3 years.
3 years.
Okay,
yes.
Increasing cystitis. Because if patient is having cystitis and she is not getting treated for that, it will go up and it might become pyelonephritis. Okay,
yes.
So our symptoms would have become much more worse with that. But in examination, you told one new thing. What was that thing?
Because she had frank stress urinary incontinence, we could demonstrate it, and she had mass per abdomen, which was corresponding, uterus was corresponding to 16 to 18 week size.
And when you did PV, you confirmed that this is a uterine mass. Uterus enlarged to 16 to 18 week size. Now, what do you think clinically by seeing? What is your diagnosis? What is this uterus?
Ma'am, if we go by examination, the uterine size makes me think of fibroid uterus.
But in history, if you correlate it with history, it can be fibroid uterus. Yes, that's the perfect diagnosis. But it does not look, one thing which doesn't go into her diagnosis, what is that?
Yes, ma'am, because she doesn't have any menstrual complaints, clots, dysmenorrhea, heavy bleeding, nothing. She doesn't have any menstrual complaints at all.
So what fibroid it is which is just causing pain
Yes,
but
ma'am.
not causing menstrual
Menstrual.
disturbances?
It can be subserosal fibroids because those are the ones which do not come with menstrual complaints.
Yes.
Whereas intramural or submucous will have a relation with endometrium, so they present with some or the other menstrual complaints.
Yes, very good. So this is the history, but it might be some kind of fibroid. So what usually if there is a fibroid, okay, what are the usual symptoms of fibroid which are related to urinary complaints? So fibroids also have urinary complaints.
Yes.
But what are the more common urinary complaints in case of a fibroid?
So, ma'am, if it is a anterior wall big fibroid, then it will have pressure on bladder, so it will cause frequency and urgency. Whereas a big posterior fibroid will pull the uterus behind, and the cervix will impinge upon the bladder and urethra, so they'll have more obstructive symptoms like difficulty in urination and poor stream and incomplete
So
voiding.
most of the time, Sonam, what we see is obstructive symptoms are more commonly seen in fibroid because this abdomen and pelvis is one cavity. When fibroids grow, they tend to occupy the upper abdomen more rather than going down because the space is less in pelvis. They tend to grow up towards the abdomen. So usually what you are saying may be one of the symptoms, that pressing the fundus and causing urgency and urge incontinence and frequency of urination. But most of the time, this frequency is not because of something pressing onto the fibroid fundus. It is because of obstructive symptoms. And obstructive symptoms means fibroid. What you said, that posterior wall fibroid cause
pulling of the uterus behind, which impinges the cervix upon the bladder and urethra.
Yeah,
So that causes some obstruction.
Obstruction there. And maybe patient, sometimes, very rarely patient might come with acute retention, but most of the times what happens that some urine they are able to pass, but some remains like residual urine. And again when this residue remains there in the bladder, it tends to cause episodes of cystitis. That is the more common presentation because the fibroids, when there are multiple fibroids also, it starts rising up in the abdomen rather than going down in the pelvis. Okay, but there are certain, so one thing is very common, that most of the times fibroid, if they are presenting with urinary symptoms, those are symptoms related to recurrent cystitis or obstruction because of residual recurrent cystitis or acute obstruction. But sometimes they can present with incontinence symptoms also. And there is this difference that most of the times incontinence, it can be urge incontinence or stress incontinence, is because of pushing of the bladder dome down because of some interval fibroids. Okay. So again, this question comes that what is the most common fibroid causing retention of urine? You have already given the answer that it is not the interval fibroid, but the posterior wall fibroid, which pulls the uterus behind, retroverts the uterus acutely, so that the cervix jets in front and presses the bladder neck in between the cervix and the pubic symphysis. So that is the pathophysiology. This is one of the questions that is commonly asked, and you have to remember also. But every time, as you said, it will not present with acute urinary retention. You should pick those symptoms in this stage when it is causing recurrent cystitis. Okay. So these are the fibroids. Now, if by chance we are thinking that this SUI is also caused, or first we have to confirm. Clinically, you are thinking that it is a case of fibroid uterus, but how are you going to confirm that?
To confirm fibroid, we can do transvaginal sonography. So when we did transvaginal sonography in this patient, we saw that there were multiple hypoechoic lesions in both anterior and posterior wall of uterus, suggestive of fibroid. And there was one lower segment big fibroid in the posterior wall of about 8 by 10 centimeter.
Okay, so definitely this patient has some subserosal and cervical fibroids, so she requires a surgery. Okay, yes. So what surgery you want to? What is her age?
53-year-old.
53.
Yes.
Is she postmenopause? No, she's still not in
menopause. She has regular cycles.
Regular cycles. Yes. So what is the treatment you had planned for her?
So, for this patient, we planned LAVH, laparoscopy assisted vaginal hysterectomy with tension-free vaginal tape by TVTO, obturator type. But intra-op, we saw that it was difficult to remove it laparoscopically because the fibroid was not uterine but it was cervical. Posterior wall cervical fibroid of 8 by 10 centimeter. It was quite big. So this was converted into total abdominal hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy was done. And then we also had put a tension-free vaginal tape, the obturated type.
Approach. Okay. So I will ask you one thing. What happens? Like sometimes when the patient presents with this, patient is presented with two symptoms. So patient might be having SUI on her own and fibroid as one of the symptoms. And there is literature actually, some literature which says that sometimes fibroid cause this stress urinary incontinence, and as soon as you remove that fibroid, is that if you surgically treat those fibroids, this urinary incontinence problems also goes away. This incontinence problem will go away. So do you want to do for this patient just hysterectomy and wait for the recovery to see how the course of stress urinary incontinence, what happens to it, or you want to perform both the surgeries together?
Ma'am, I think the way we managed this case was the right way because we don't know here the cause of stress urinary incontinence is fibroid only or it is because of the previous normal vaginal delivery or any birth trauma or any laxity. So if we had we only removed the fibroid, she would have come with either increase in her symptoms. Symptoms must have worsened because when we do hysterectomy, all the ligaments are cut, so that loosens, that gives more laxity. So it should in fact increase her symptoms if it was not the if fibroid wasn't the reason. So it's a good thing that we put a transvaginal tape because it goes either way. Be the fibroid be it a reason for her symptom or not, the problem is solved either way.
So there is one trick, one question you could have asked her before her surgery or in her history, which will tell you that whether this problem is because of fibroid or this problem is not because of fibroid. Because this you cannot find out if a lady is postmenopausal, but I'm giving you this as the hint that in premenopausal lady, you can ask one question and get some idea whether this problem is related just to the fibroid or this problem is not related to the fibroid.
Ma'am, during menses, if her symptoms are increasing,
Not during menses.
just premenstrual, correct?
Yes, very good. So if premenstrually her symptoms, all symptoms because of congestion of the pelvis and congestion of the uterus that time, all symptoms should increase premenstrually. And so this is one important trick. So did we ask this question to patient?
No, ma'am, we didn't. I'll keep this in mind for next.
So maybe patient did not tell this history, but those patients will typically say that every time they are not having. Some days and months they will have more of stress urinary incontinence, some days they will not have. Then when you ask, they will say, yeah, premenstrually the symptoms become more problematic as compared to during menstruation or post-menstrual. Okay, so this is a big clue which will help you to find out the relationship. So you have managed this patient.
Yes, ma'am.
So you did hysterectomy
Yes,
for
ma'am.
patient and put a tension-free vaginal tray by obturator approach. Now follow up. Anything significant in her post-op recovery period you
Yes,
saw?
ma'am. So we kept catheter for 1 day, and next day we asked when.
So let me repeat it here. In our protocol, we do not cut the tension-free vaginal tape on OT table. We keep them rolled long for post-operative adjustment. And the surgery was also done under general anesthesia.
anesthesia. Yes.
So it is very important because in spinal anesthesia, at least some adjustment idea you have that time. But because of her laparoscopic hysterectomy, which was planned, patient was already in general anesthesia. So we could not actually elicit properly how much stress she was recovered of after the tape was put.
Yes, ma'am. So post-operatively, we asked her to observe while voiding if her symptoms have come down, and on straining if her symptoms have come down. She had significant relief. She said that she had no urgency frequency anymore, and she had no difficulty in passing urine, and the stress incontinence has also gone. And we also did a transabdominal sonography to check for residual volume. So on post-op day 1, when we did the scan, we saw that she had around 250 to 260 cc of residual urine.
Was it normal?
No, ma'am, it was a
What is the
normal.
normal amount of post-void residual volume which we expect after our tape is nicely put?
Yes, ma'am. Acceptable, it should be at least less than 100. Normal, we would say by books 50 cc, but yeah, practically less than 100 should be okay.
Yes. So how much was it? You said it was around
250
250
to
to
260
260.
cc. So we loosened our tape a little on day one, and we repeated scan next day again, and it was still 150 to 160 ml residual urine was visible. So, but we did not loosen it more because that may, because there is no very,
Actually, we tried second
yeah,
time
yeah, we
also.
did try.
We did try because again when we repeated second day it was around 200 ml of residual
Yes.
urine. We loosened it a bit and then we told the patient to pass urine. Again we found that it was more than 100
Still,
ml.
yes.
But we decided not to loosen it more because when we were loosening it little more and telling the patient to cough, actually she started leaking again.
Correct.
So there was a very delicate balance where we wanted to stop that tape. So we thought when patient is not having any problems, she was having a good stream of urine, she was not having any urgency kind of symptoms, and properly she was able to pass urine. We thought my explanation for this would be Sonal that maybe there was a cervical fibroid which was impinging onto the bladder for some duration, 2 to 3 or 5 years of time. So bladder walls might have got little edematous and which were holding the urine for some time. Maybe bladder neck was also little edematous. And we are hoping that now we have done surgery also, remove the fibroid, that effect which was there because of the fibroid will wean off and the patient's bladder will get into the normal action, and next time when we do her residual volume will come back to normal. Because the little adjustment, if we would have loosened it a little bit, maybe residual volume we would have been able to manage it little lower, but again patient would have gone back into stress urinary incontinence, which we didn't want. So this risk we have taken, and we have called her when now?
We have called her 2 months later for a review scan and to check upon her symptoms again.
Yeah, and with our experience, we'll know that this kind of symptom or this kind of problem we can handle with physiotherapy and bladder draining and lifestyle modification. So not a big deal, but we have to remember that she should not have a lot of residual urine in her bladder because that will lead again to recurrent cystitis. Okay, so we have to take care of that. But I think we can manage that much. It's not too much of full bladder.
Yes.
So what are the things you learned from this case? Tell me 2 or 3 places, then we'll wind up.
Yes, ma'am. So this case, ma'am, I never saw this combination of fibroid and urinary symptoms. This is the first case I'm seeing. So now I know that what kind of fibroid can lead to what kind of urinary symptoms. So always when a patient comes with urinary symptoms and I can see a mass per abdomen, I'll always think of this as a cause of urinary symptom. And we will think of this transvaginal tape, and we will think of any
tension-free vaginal tape.
Sorry, tension-free vaginal tape. Yeah, that is one thing. And second thing is the management of this case. Like any other case, we could have thought that this is just a fibroid causing it, and we could have only a simple myomectomy or hysterectomy would have relieved the symptoms. But we didn't do that. We went with tension-free vaginal tape because we didn't know the cause here, and had fibroid not been the cause, her symptoms would have never been relieved, and she would say my life would be was better with fibroid.
So in Sonal, when you see practice in developing world or where everybody comes under insurance, every surgery is insurance related and patient don't have to pay, their and patient's education level, their understanding level is little better than what kind of patients we are dealing with. It is totally a different ball game. So there they do not, they treat one condition. Even when they are suspecting de novo stress urinary incontinence, they will just do vaginal hysterectomy, explain to the patient that she can have de novo stress urinary incontinence even if there is 50% chance, and the patient comes back and gets herself operated. But our population is entirely different. Educational level, their understanding level, and they cannot devote. Most of these women are working either at home or at some other level, so they cannot afford to leave their family for so many days. So if you leave this patient now, maybe she will never come back for another with difficulty. We admit them, we operate them. So again, it will be very difficult for her to come back to the hospital, get admitted for another problem and get operated. So we try to take a chance and we try to somehow find out if those two things are related and we take care of both the things in one shot.
In one.
Okay, this is our logistic issues which we have to deal, which might differ from population to population and country to country. But I think this was the right way to do for this particular patient. And one more thing we'll remember, or you will remember, that whenever you are thinking that a fibroid is the cause of some urinary symptoms, always ask about its aggravation and
With
its
menstrual
relieving with
cycle.
menstrual cycle.
Correct.
That will help you to differentiate whether the cause is different or the cause is the same.
Same.
I think yes, for us also it is not a very common case to discuss fibroid and urinary incontinence, though literature says that the incidence of fibroid with stress urinary incontinence 7 times more than as compared to the general population. And what is the incidence in general population?
Now it is 40 to 42%.
40 to 50%.
50%.
Because what we say in easy words, we say that once a lady has given birth, in that population, if we say every second to every third lady will have some degree of stress urinary incontinence. It can be mild, it can be moderate or severe, but some degree of stress urinary incontinence is seen in every second to every third lady. Okay? So it is very common problem itself in a normal population, and if you add one more risk of fibroid, then the incidence increases up to 7%. Okay? So we have to keep this in mind, and as the awareness of patient is increasing about the disease, they will self-report the problem. And then we should know how to manage and how to take a good history for that patient. I think you did a good job, Sonu. Thank you so much.